Let's dive right into this explainer. Today, we're playing financial detective because we are going to solve a massive, incredibly common, and frankly terrifying financial mystery that haunts pharmaceutical contract manufacturing organizations across the globe. We're talking about the profitability paradox. If you've ever stared at a soaring top line and a shrinking bottom line and thought, what on earth is going on? Well, you're in exactly the right place. Here's the central paradox that literally keeps manufacturing executives up at night. How in the world can a company increase its production volume, successfully push more units out the door, drive up its revenue, and yet still experience lower profitability? I mean, how does an increase in sales lead to a decrease in EBITDA? It sounds impossible, right? But it happens all the time in pharma manufacturing. On the surface, it looks like a party. Revenue is up, volume is up, and your sales team is probably popping champagne. But look over on the flip side. This is the harsh operational reality on the manufacturing floor. Profitability is actually down, overtime is skyrocketing, and the operations manager is likely pulling their hair out. The numbers don't seem to make sense together, but trust me, they are intrinsically linked. So how do we solve this? Here's our roadmap for the explainer. First, the profitability paradox. Second, understanding the mix. Third, gross versus contribution margin. Fourth, drivers of pharma profitability. Fifth, bridging the EBITDA gap. And finally, building the FP&A engine. Okay, part one, the profitability paradox. Let's unmask the culprit behind those shrinking margins. The culprit is almost always something called mix. Now, mix is simply the composition of products, customers, or manufacturing activities within your total business operations. Because let's be honest, not all products are equally profitable. Not all customers use the same operational resources. And crucially, not all manufacturing runs are equally efficient. When your profitability tanks despite rising sales, you've got a mix problem. Which brings us to part two, understanding the mix. Why not all revenue is created equal. This right here is the ultimate aha moment. Let's walk through this comparison. We've got two products, an OTC cream and a small RX batch. Look at the revenue. They both generate exactly $5 million. If you only look at the top line, they are identical twins. But look at the contribution margin. The OTC cream sits at a very healthy 35%, while that small RX batch is barely scraping by at 8%. Why the huge gap? Because the operational complexity for the cream is incredibly low, but for that small RX batch, it is off the charts. And this visually illustrates that vast canyon between the two. That 8% bar, that means the RX batch is secretly eating up your operational capacity. Sure, it brought in $5 million, but it's causing crazy setup and cleaning times. It's forcing weekend overtime for your staff, and it's jamming up quality assurance. That single product is literally dragging down your entire facility's EBITDA, despite its impressive revenue. Moving to part three, gross versus contribution margin. This is all about finding your true operational profitability. You know, most companies just default to looking at gross margin, which is revenue minus cost of goods sold. The problem is, COGS includes fixed manufacturing overhead, so your gross margin gets totally distorted by inventory changes, standard costing, and overhead absorption. It just blurs the lines. Contribution margin, on the other hand, is just revenue minus variable costs, things like direct materials, direct labor, and variable packaging. It completely strips out fixed overhead and corporate SG&A. So, contribution margin wins every single time when you're diagnosing operational health. It gives you the true, unvarnished operational profitability and the actual incremental profit impact on your EBITDA. In pharma manufacturing, where labor intensity, QA burdens, and changeovers fluctuate so wildly from batch to batch, this is your hero metric. It tells you exactly which products actually contribute to the bottom line, and which are just busy work. All right, part four, drivers of pharma profitability. Let's deconstruct the variances. Finance teams rely on cost-volume mix variance analysis, which breaks down into three buckets. Volume variance tracks the impact from changes in total units sold. Cost variance looks at changes in labor, materials, or efficiency. But step two, mix variance, that's the key to our whole paradox. It measures the impact from a changing product composition. This perfectly explains how your total unit volume can stay totally flat, yet your profitability just plummets because your sales shifted toward low-margin, highly labor-intensive products. Let's ground this financial theory in the physical reality of a pharma plant. What's actually driving this mix? Well, it could be product mix, say liquids versus tablets. It's heavily influenced by batch size mix. Small batches need massive setup and cleaning times for very little output. Then there's packaging mix. Think about the crazy labor required to pack complex blister packs or serialization tubes compared to just dumping pills into bottles. And lastly, customer mix. Are you working with a client who gives stable forecasts or someone demanding constant rush changes that completely derail your schedule? Next up, part 5, bridging the EBITDA gap. Let's visualize exactly what happened and why. Enter the EBITDA bridge waterfall. We start on the left with prior year EBITDA sitting at a healthy $20 million. Awesome. Then we get a volume increase that adds $3 million and a price increase adding another $1 million. Up to this point, leadership is thrilled. But wait, a negative shift in product mix completely wipes out $4 million. That bad mix tanks labor efficiency, costing another $2 million, and triggers negative manufacturing variances, draining $1 million more. We end the current year at $17 million. This perfectly shows how a toxic mix eats every single volume and pricing gain you made. And those last 2 drops on the bridge, they come straight from manufacturing variances caused by that bad mix. When a bad mix forces line stoppages, you get absorption variance, meaning low utilization is underabsorbing your fixed costs. You hit labor variance from overtime and endless setups, and you get yield variance from scrap, rework, and quality losses. These are the very real, very expensive consequences of poorly managed mix. Finally, part 6, building the FP&A engine, how to equip your team with the right tools. If you're using a tool like Power BI, here's your rapid-fire data model checklist. You absolutely need strong dimensions: a product dimension tracking SKUs and batch sizes, a customer dimension tracking strategic margin tiers, and a standard calendar dimension. Then you connect those to your fact tables. By integrating your SAP production data, things like labor hours and scrap, directly with your Salesforce pipeline, you build a dynamic, fully realized operational model. But hey, if you're starting in Excel, you can literally build this today. Step 1, pull your raw SAP and Salesforce exports into one sheet. Step 2, create master tables to cleanly map out your products and customers. Step 3, use Power Pivot to hook it all together by SKU, customer, and date. And step 4, build a dashboard with pivot tables, slicers, and those waterfall margin bridges we just looked at. It's a highly actionable framework you can use right now to start gaining visibility. As we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with a pretty powerful strategic insights. The goal is not simply to maximize revenue. The goal is to maximize profitable and operationally efficient revenue. It goes back to that old saying, revenue is vanity, margin is sanity. Winning a massive contract that destroys your operational efficiency, that's not a win, that's a liability. Which leaves us with this final critical question for you to take back to your own teams. Which products and customers in your mix are actually profitable? Seriously, don't just look at the gross margin. Don't just stare at top-line sales. Dig into the contribution margin, map out those mix variances, and find out what is genuinely driving your EBITDA. Thanks so much for joining me for this explainer. Get out there, build those models, and take back control of your profitability.